Hello, this is Victor Hess. I want to tell you more about Jesse's story. So my first book started as a memoir. That's Jesse Sings. And as I wrote it, I thought it so profound, this story I had to tell, that I took my story with me to a writing workshop in St. Augustine, where, surrounded by experienced writers with MFAs, I discovered how deep my humility would need to be as I faced more than my fair share of criticism. I had done everything wrong. One of my high school English teachers, Cora Balmer, was so much kinder to me than these people who taught literature in universities and published books. So I went to more workshops and discovered how these same people would ultimately be my greatest allies and even interested in my success. As a result of their advice, my memoir became more interesting. All I had to do was change all the names, add fictional events, and fictional characters. Another piece of advice I received was to read a lot of other books. A good author owes it to his or her readers to provide accurate information, but as the author weaves characters and settings into a plot, sometimes the imagination takes over and tries to alter history. The reader that notices it may become distracted by the error and lose interest in books, and a once good story becomes soured and ignored. The reader is the ultimate test of historical accuracy. So in my books, some things are left out, others are made up, and all in all, it is still a work of fiction, told from the point of view of a child. In the book Jesse Sings, I had started referring to the Cincinnati baseball team as the Reds, of course, until I was reviewing news articles of this period around 1954. And everywhere in those papers, they were referred to as the Redlegs. I went to Wikipedia and learned that from 1954, the Cincinnati team was renamed the Redlegs after Senator Joe McCarthy of Wisconsin started his communist hunt in the Senate. Senate hearings were televised as McCarthy searched for commies and Reds. Nobody wanted to be referred to as a Red, including Wally Post. So they changed the name to the Redlegs. Well, in 1959, they returned to the popular moniker of the Reds. In the Clock Tower Treasure, Jesse Hall has a paper route and delivered papers to Helen Hooven Santmeyer. You may know her as a famous Ohio author. One scene was of her giving Jesse a book as a Christmas gift. "Read the chapter about the clock tower," she said. As I was doing the acknowledgments for this book and pulled out my copy of Ohio Town, there was the date, copyright 1962. However, in my book, Helen Santmeyer gave Jesse his book in 1956. Well, I had to delete all that dialogue. But don't worry, she'll be giving Jesse that gift in my third book, which covers 1962. Music helps us all bring back memories. But when you're writing a book, you can't have a song playing on the radio when it hadn't been written yet. I had Jesse listening to Volare, True Love Ways, and other neat music long before it was written. So I had to change them to Que Sera and Hot Diggity Dog Diggity. So a piece of fiction should pay attention to events of the time, and that may serve as a lesson within itself. For example, there was one scene in Jesse Sings where the teacher is describing to the kids that their Pledge of Allegiance had changed over the year with the addition of Under God. And so there's about a 4-page section that describes why Eisenhower thought that was a great thing to do. So what resources are available to an author who wants to accurately portray setting and time? Well, here's a small list I put together solely based on my experience with these two books. Visit museums and libraries. My resources for my two books included the Greene County Historical Society, the Dayton Metro Library, and the Sabina Historical Society. Use the internet. I subscribe to newspapers.com and have found articles from many papers about Eugene, one of my characters. He was that man found dead in Sabina, Ohio in 1929 and kept on display until 1964. Wikipedia helped me keep my information about Helen Hooven Santmeyer as accurate as possible. I wondered how Jesse and Lynn, 10-year-old kids, learned about certain things, like sex, and thought the library would have been a resource for them. But I could not find a set of encyclopedias dated in the 1950s. So I researched and found a set on eBay. That was the heaviest box ever delivered to my house. I grabbed the volume where sex would be, and guess what? The word wasn't there, not in the 50s. This explains, I guess, how I remained so ignorant about certain things for so long. I do talk a lot about the cost of things and the popularity of things, and found that a copy of the Sears Roebuck catalog from the 1950s that I purchased on eBay was perfect. Grocery ads in newspapers were informative. I ordered a Boy's Life magazine and a scout manual online from eBay and used them to assure my scouting scenes were accurate. Another fun way to be sure your history is right is go ahead and visit your setting. There's nothing wrong with a good field trip, especially if it takes you back to your hometown. When I visited Sabina, I went to the shed where they kept Eugene on display. Yes, it's still there. The storefront is there too, where Jesse first met the 5 and dime clerk. Remember Karen? And then there's Eugene's grave, and that will play a part in the third book. A recent visit to Xenia led me to the acquaintance of Catherine Wilson for research regarding the Tecumseh and Rebecca Galloway legend. She is in charge of the Greene County Historical Society. Some legends, like the Tecumseh Galloway romance, which you can read about in my book, have little basis of fact. I chose not to challenge the story, but to keep the question alive. Visiting the cabin, the Galloway cabin, was unique and informative. Fireplaces and authentic furniture were still there and very helpful. And of course, everywhere I went, I took pictures. If your writing is based on your life or another's, arrange for interviews. Recent discussions with my brother and sister offered some colorful facts, which make the fiction more interesting to the reader. The first chapter of Jesse Sings recounts Jesse's encounter with baby chicks and an outhouse, and a valuable lesson he learned from his grandpa. A recent discussion with my cousin confirmed the event actually took place. After all, Jesse was only 5 at the time. How could he remember? Read books. The acknowledgments page on the Clock Tower Treasure lets you know that it was important for me to read other persons' accounts with polio, and that hopefully made scenes more realistic. The Dayton Metro Library sent me copies of pages from a pamphlet about the Barney Convalescent Center, which was part of the recovery process for many people suffering from infantile paralysis. It eventually became the Children's Hospital there. The book by James Galloway, Old Chillicothe, and then those Alan Eckert books gave me the historical and personal background that helped with scenes regarding the hunt for the treasure. Legends do come alive in those books. So to review, in order to keep background factual in a fictional book, visit museums and libraries. Use the vastness of the internet. Just use it with caution. Visit your setting, take field trips, take pictures, interview resources to certain events, read similar books, stories, and first-hand accounts. And if you do all this, you give your reader an authentic feel for time and place. So what is next for Jesse? The third book of Jesse Hall is currently titled The Wesley 7 Club. It takes Jesse to his first year in college. We'll see who Jesse has grown up to be. It will involve more research about selective service, you know, the draft, JFK, Martin Luther King, and the space race. Thank you so much for letting me share this information with you.